The purpose of this show is to guide you to realign with habits that get you to live the life you've always dreamed of. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with Jesse Ewing. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle, where you can access your full potential right now. Finally break free from destructive habits. That dream life, if you want it, you can have it. This is where you transform your health, mind, business, and relationships. Or do nothing and keep your life the way it is. But if you're ready for change, you're in the right place. This is where you're gonna learn how to live a habit-based lifestyle. You are tuning in to the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Jesse Ewing. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle. Let's go.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Habit-Based Lifestyle and Business Show. Today, we have some very special guests on here. We have Steve Adams, who is the creator of Tiger Performance Institute. And we also have Dr. Matthew McNamee, who's the Tiger Medical Lead Physician. He's been in practice 12 years, and he does, they run a preventative health model where they really optimize human physiology. So guys, I want to thank you for being on here today.
Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah. So Steve, let's start with you.
Okay.
Let's talk about, kind of maybe just give us a little framework of where we're going to go today. But what is this really about, Tiger Performance Institute?
Well, Tiger Performance Institute and Tiger Medical Institute are sister companies that I own. Dr. Matt is a partner in these. And our big goal, if I was really going to break it down in 30 seconds, is that we want to optimize your physiology today so that you can have sustainable elite health in the long run. And by doing that, you're going to have sustainable elite or peak performance as well in the long run. And what we really want to do is just help leaders, entrepreneurs, executives, professionals be able to do what they do longer.
Okay, awesome. I mean, that kind of covered everything, right?
Yeah, we're done, right?
So I really want to break this down today, kind of from where you're at on the outside, kind of pushing the company forward, and then in the trenches with Matthew on, how and really the what and the why behind this. But let's start first, kind of, for you, Steve, is like, how did you actually find this method? Was there something that happened in your past that kind of led you down this path?
Yes, Jesse, that's a good question. I was a corporate banker the first 15 years out of college. And, I'm type A, I go hard. I did all of the mindset stuff, good habits, but like a lot of people, I didn't pay attention to my body because I thought I was bulletproof. And then I started a company of franchise pet stores and grew that into about a 50 store chain. We were over 100 million in revenue and had 800 employees, had a great team. Wasn't just me, but had a great team. But in the process of doing that, I actually suffered burnout. And so in 2017, I sold my interest to my partners. And during the reset year, I took a year off. I really went deep dive into how did I get here? What happened to me? I mean, I actually was officially diagnosed with burnout. And through the process of that discovery, I won't bore you with all the details. I really came to the conclusion that I wanted to create a company that gave people like me tools I never had so that they didn't suffer the same fate. And in the process of doing all that, 2 years ago, I met Dr. Matt in Los Angeles, and we've been working together and designing this from the beginning.
Wow. Okay. So you've taken literally your mess, which is,
Correct.
The entrepreneur burnout, and you've turned it into your mission, and you've surrounded yourself with people who, are smarter than you, which, I always say as a businessman, if you can surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, you'll always have a good business model. And, it sounds like exactly what you did. But Tell me, let's get into this with Matthew a little bit. Matthew, what's this been like for you kind of on that journey from when you first met Steve to kind of like where you guys are now?
Oh, it's been so much fun. I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been a ride. It's been awesome working with Steve because he does nothing but support and encourage whatever, goals and dreams I may have and passions that I have, which is awesome. So, he and I started chatting, a couple years ago and basically brainstorming on, how we could better serve, individuals like him. And it continued to grow, month by month by month. We kept expanding and trying to create something that, would provide, very comprehensive testing and assessments of these individuals that we work with, and create a game plan for them that will optimize their current state of health, but keep them going much longer, make them better employers, employees, husbands, wives, friends, etc.
Okay, so Steve comes in, guys burn out, he's having maybe some health concerns or just stress levels. What do what did you initially start doing with someone like that? Like, what is the thing that kind of makes you unique, makes you different in what you guys do?
Well, I mean, I was blessed with working about a decade outside of Silicon Valley. So just my experience with working with young individuals, I saw people in their 30s and 40s that were presenting with the same symptoms and very similar labs of what I would see people in their 60s, 70s, 80s.
Wow.
So, in my, a lot of my experience and specialties around hormones and hormone optimization and balancing and such, and a lot of these people that I was seeing were pretty, they were in quite disarray, imbalanced, and taxed in some areas and in excess in other areas. And if we don't address, some of the driving factors which will create the imbalances, when we try to correct them, it's harder to correct without hitting some of the driving factors. So you got to look at that, look at some of the, look at optimizing some of the other levels, the hormones, and then the downstream effects. I mean, it affects everyone differently. It can affect cognitive function. It can affect your cardiovascular system, your gastrointestinal system, et cetera. And that's basically, the stress, which people, which precipitates the burnout. It has a lot of essentially short-term benefit effects, but the long-term, when you're in that chronic state, can be quite deleterious to the system. So.
Okay. And
Jesse, I would just add, Matt is a naturopathic MD. And so Matt, you had an opportunity to study under a guy or work with a guy in Silicon Valley that had a unique approach. And then Matt, you've kind of adapted your approach even more. Maybe you could share a little bit of what it means to work with a naturopathic doctor versus a traditional allopathic.
Well, I mean, my training was with an allopathic doctor. I mean, she her specialty was in internal medicine and endocrinology, and she basically was a board member on the American College for Advancement in Medicine, which is an integrative medicine community. And she started to create and evolve basically looking at the hormones in the body instead of looking at a very tunnel vision, being able to look at the impact on the brain's neurochemistry. So she really kind of focused on neuroendocrinology, so hormones and brain neurochemistry and their interplay. And that's where a lot of my training was under her and in that model. So it was very unique than just looking, at the hormones. So she practiced in, like myself and like naturopathic doctors for the most part as well, practice in, essentially instead of a Band-Aid approach, looking at using natural remedies, pharmaceuticals, if need be for the time and the place, as just a buffer. I will use them as a buffer to balance the system. And then if I, taper them off by using other ways to get their system back to balance. But the goal is to really treat the root cause. I'm all about figuring out what is underlying the symptoms, and not just throwing natural or pharmaceutical band-aids at them. Like, I want to figure out what the root cause is, create harmony in the system, and create sustained balance. And then all the symptoms go away.
Right. And the kind of the traditional model of medicine is it's very reactive. What I'm learning from you is you guys are very proactive. So it's like it's not only figuring out what's going on, but it's like, hey, what is the root cause of this, and how can we, change this going forward so that you really, optimize and are living kind of in a preventative health model, and an optimized health model versus the reactive health model, which is a little more of what traditional medicine is, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a disease model base. So it's wait for a disease to fit certain criteria and different blood parameters or whatever they're testing. And then once there's a quote unquote disease label on it, then they can approach that in an algorithmic approach. Where I look, other functional medicine practitioners basically will look at the process on a continuum. So you've got, in the beginning, optimal health, and then it doesn't just go right to disease overnight. There's a process. The cells, the tissues, et cetera, start to function suboptimally, and that's where we see dysfunction. And that's where, the extensive testing that we do, gives us a lot more insight on where to look for certain imbalances, what to address, and where to focus our energy on optimizing those cells and tissues.
One thing that's sad, Jesse, is that really hit me is, when a guy or a woman gets in their 50s, the 60s, those ought to be the most productive, biggest impact years of their life, because you've got all of this experience. You've mastered your foolishness. You can maximize your focus on the right things. And that's the time that, when we don't take care of ourselves, and the current medical model waits for you to start getting sick. And now you've got these limitations that prevent you from really leveraging what should be your best 2 decades of your life.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do, is eliminate that. And I'll give you an example from my own life. I had a 25-year battle with acid reflux, and to the point it was affecting my sleep and my performance, because every night I was waking up with like chest pains, and it was just the reflux, which was disrupting my sleep, which was disrupting my energy, which then worked against my performance. And Matt, maybe you can share as an example, how our advanced testing helped you locate what you felt was the cause and how that corrected my problem. And I'm fine. Go ahead. HIPAA, no problem. I'm saying it's okay to share.
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess, without getting too in depth into the complexities of it, I mean, essentially, you had, 3/4 of our immune system's located just on the other side of the lining of our gastrointestinal tract, which is about, when it's spread out, about the surface area of a tennis court, and about the width of a paper towel. And 3/4 of the immune system is supposed to be on the other side to keep things in check and keep things in balance. And what we noticed with Steve's was his was quite depressed, and it can be for many different factors in different individuals. Likely his was due to the elevated stressors, cortisol, et cetera, can depress these levels, which then in turn can make the system more sensitive to other bugs in the gut, pathogens and such. Foods as well. We don't have the same checks and balance system with foods. So essentially, he was getting a systemic response, likely coming from the gastrointestinal tract, creating inflammation and such that was, creating almost like a post-nasal drip cough that was draining down into his lungs, and then he just had this persistent cough all the time.
Okay.
So, and again, that's just kind of an example of looking at the body as systems instead of just separated parts. I mean, we're a complex organism, and everything's tied together. So, in that sense, some people would say, let's just go do let's go to the pulmonologist and see if it's something in the respiratory tract, or someone that specializes in ENT, or et cetera, but not linking the systems-based kind of approach together, looking at the whole picture.
Well,
yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I'll just say real simply, what he did was he supported what he felt was the deficiency through a couple of over-the-counter supplements and a drink. And 4 months later, I'm free of it after 25 years of being sent to 3 different specialists and drugs.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. One thing I'll kind of, relate this to is like, I come from a personal training background, and, a lot of people, quote unquote, would say, okay, we train body parts, versus, where I learned is like, no, we train the body as a system, one unit that works together. And when something isn't working, it's not just that, we have to trace it back to the origin of the root, which is kind of what I hear you're saying is like, listen, I look at the body as one system. When something's not functioning, we have to trace that back to the root cause. And that's what I really hear that you guys are doing.
100%. Yeah, I think probably in your situation, you probably take a step back. If someone's struggling with something in their back, may not just be looking just at their back, but let's look at maybe their gait and how they're walking, or et cetera. Looking at the big picture, essentially.
Right.
And that's exactly what we do.
Yeah, that's all. So when someone comes into you, what's the initial thing that you guys do that really starts setting them up for success, to where you guys really start looking at them as like, okay, here's what we need to do first?
Well, we've worked out a whole coaching protocol. So we have a coach that works under Dr. Matt. And so the process is right up front. They complete an extensive health history. And when I mean extensive, I mean extensive. And Dr. Matt wants to know everything. And that's filled out online. And Matt, I'll let you comment here in a second. So health history is filled out. That gets the ball rolling with Dr. Matt. At the same time, we have them do a genetics test up front, because it takes a little bit of time. And Matt, maybe you can explain why we do that. And then we start them out right away on heart rate variability training, so that they learn how to self-regulate themselves through a stress event. And then shortly thereafter, we get them on an Oura ring, because we found that's the best for tracking sleep architecture. We also track their HRV on that. And so our coach, basically the first 3 months, while we're waiting for all the labs to come in and get done, 3 to 4 months, our coach is working on sleep and de-stressing the individual. Because if we get those 2 things accomplished on the front end, they've already got a big win. And then that's setting them up for more focus on the lifestyle habit changes that Dr. Matt will prescribe once he has all of his data. So Matt, you want to add anything to that? And maybe touch on why we do the genetic side too.
Yeah, I think, sleep and stress are two of the areas that if people need support, it's typically in one or both of those areas, quite common, especially in our culture with the devices and the external stressors and all of that. is nice about that is it gives me some information already once I start working with the individuals, if we need to actually delve in a little bit further, if they're not getting balanced out in those areas. The genetics test that comes in, what it does is it basically gives me insight into how their body is operating in real time. So it actually kind of gives me, if I were to look at the body as a machine and all these different, integrated parts, it can basically give me insight on areas that are optimal, that are functioning optimally, and areas that maybe need some support. And then, in areas that essentially, we may want to look at through lifestyle and such, on essentially turning off their expression, things that would be, essentially could be harmful to the body. Because we know now that genes are not, 100% your destiny. They play a role, but the environment you're in plays a much bigger role. And that's kind of where we come into play. So we get some information, and then we really start, personalizing it to each individual. Some we may be paying more attention to their cardiovascular system. Some we may be paying more attention to their gastrointestinal system. Some their metabolism and how they metabolize carbohydrates, and their propensity to develop diabetes and such. I couple all that information with current live data, i.e. blood work and stuff, to see what's going on actively in their system through different physiological and biochemical processes. And then, we've been really fine-tuned stuff at that point, to create a very holistic program for that individual. It's not just here's your supplement and then you walk off. It's, it is a life program for these individuals, but it's like changing now as well.
Let me ask you this. So like you do this initial, kind of DNA blood test. Is there another retesting phase down the road to see what's changed, say 6 months down the road, so you can really look at, okay, what's changing, what's not changing,
right,
and then make adjustments from there.
Right. So the DNA, we don't. So the DNA is kind of the backbone. And then we look at essentially, if you will, weak links that need support. The information that I look at in series will be, we do very comprehensive hormones, like I mentioned before, very in-depth cardiovascular markers, much more in-depth than what you would get just going to a regular checkup and such. And then other things, I look at stool tests to look at the microbiome health, your digestive health, and other markers as well, neurotransmitters and such. Those are where we get some baselines, and then we follow up to see with whatever program we're working with and suggesting for each individual to see, ideally that we're making progress and as much as I would like, and where do we need to adjust things as we move forward, so we will remeasure those 100%.
Okay. I would just add that what we hope is someone will go through this 1-year program, which is basically the reset, find the truth. The genetics thing, the way I love to describe it is it's like each person's unique owner's manual. You get one for something you buy. This is on you. This is literally your unique owner's manual. And so if we only need to test it once, and then after that, the actual testing is really driven by Dr. Matt and the patient. We have a renewal program, come back in a year and do it all over again.
Okay.
And we encourage everybody to do that, because why would you want to do it once and then never know the truth again?
Sure.
But if, for instance, if Dr. Matt has somebody that has a more pressing problem, he may want to measure one aspect. There's one area of me, I've got an inflammation marker that he wants to look at about, I don't know, maybe once a quarter or 3 times a year to see if it's going in the right direction. So that really becomes a conversation between Dr. Matt and the patient on how often they want to test.
Okay, cool. So let me ask you this, who's the majority of clients coming in to see you guys? Can you kind of paint out their profile, Steve? Maybe you can start and then Matt can kind of add in.
The people that we really can help are 40 plus high achievers. They're pushing it. They're executives in a large company with a lot of responsibility, or an entrepreneur who's got everything on their shoulders, the professional who's in tax season, or the busy lawyer. And the reason we can help them the most when they're that middle age is, all three of us are kind of there. I'm the oldest, clearly. And we knew that point when all of a sudden we weren't bulletproof anymore. And so, somebody in their 20s or 30s, we certainly could help them. But our best customer, our primary customer, is that high achiever who's entering middle age, and they start to develop some unique challenges. And also, what's unique about this individual is they're busy, and they don't have room for a lot of complexity, and they don't have room for an hour a day. And so I know that, and we've designed this for people like me, who. And like you, Jesse, and like others, we've built this for you so that you can do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Anything you want to add to that, Matthew?
I think, I'll just share with you, what I commonly see with those types of individuals. 40 plus is, they typically don't have the same mental and physical stamina that they used to. Their stress response is not as resilient. They don't handle and manage stress as well. They're probably not waking and feeling as refreshed as they used to. They're having some sleep problems, likely gaining a little abdominal weight. Typically their interest in sex will start to decline. And then it's a little bit more unique for men and women. Women, typically start having, hormonal imbalances around menopause and such. And my goal is just to help them transition through that stuff with ease, but, get them back to the way they were feeling in if it was their 30s or 20s, whenever that was ideal.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying, well, listen, just because you're stressed, you're not sleeping well, just because you're, maybe increasing your body fat, all those things, like your life, you don't have to accept that as the new standard for your life. You're saying, like, listen, we can actually change that and have you feeling better and really optimize your life at 40, 50, 60, and have you feeling better than you were maybe at 20 or 30 years old.
110%. Honestly, I've said this in the past with probably Steve and a few others. It's like, I a lot of times will get people that don't think things are really that off, and they feel like they're operating at a 10 out of 10. And when I start working with them after a while, from a lot of different, angles, trying to support and optimize, their health and well-being, they reset the bar. Their new norm is much higher, which is
right.
fun. It's awesome. Like, I like to work with people that are challenged. Like, oh no, I'm great. I'm at a 10 out of 10. And then that changes. And I go, wow, I don't know if I have ever felt this, this well before, or maybe it has been a long time, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to really, the Tiger method is, number one, understanding stress response, stress resilience, and then really diving into sleep optimization. And then once you've kind of done those things, then it's more of the personalized plan, kind of the DNA work, blood work, and things like that, stool. And then we get kind of a map to say, okay, listen, here's where we're going to start. And then here's what we're going to work towards going. And that's really what makes you, an expert, is you're saying, well, listen, we're going to gather all this data, and then we're going to create a map and a plan for you to go to. And then you guide them, to that place. And then, from what I've understood, you guys have a coach too, that also helps with that too, with kind of the maybe like habit changes and things like that in the environment and different stuff.
You're right. And we're different on several levels. One, the testing is more advanced than what most people are getting. And it's coming from a perspective of prevention, proactivity versus disease management. So that's different. And then we've curated down. I mean, Jesse, there's 100 biohacking things you can do. This is the 80-20 principle. Fix your stress management and your sleep and change your lifestyle based off the truth, the unique truth about you. That gets you the results. Forget about the other 97.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And then we back it with a year of coaching support. And, you don't just see Dr. Matt at the health history intake and the results. Dr. Matt follows up with people also during that year. And so, our goal is to get you there. We had a Big Ten basketball coach come to us, and, everybody knows the crazy life these people live. High stress, no sleep, lots of travel. All of them look horrible when they get in their 60s because of the lifestyle. And we got one that was a particular live wire from Penn State, Coach Chambers. And he went from this stressed out, never sleep, doesn't talk to his wife very well and his kids, hair trigger temper, got in trouble on national TV, pushing a player on a timeout. And a year later, I see him in Naples, Florida for coffee. And the guy is tan and relaxed. And he said, my marriage has never been better. My relationship, my kids have never been better. I learned that I was going in a bad direction with my health. And now I have a whole new lease on life, if you will. And that's what we can do. And that's what drives me. So
a lot of these entrepreneurs, business owners, coaches, kind of high performers, they're coming into you because they're really living in a state of fight or flight. I always tell people, that state is like having a Ferrari in your driveway and you're stepping on the gas and you have the emergency brake up at the same time. And you're looking around like,
yep,
hey, this is an amazing car, but you're like, I'm not going anywhere. And all of a sudden I start hearing some smoking, but I just can't figure out where it's coming from.
Spot on. And to piggyback on what Matt was saying is, even if you think you're not always stressed and you're doing okay, if you're middle-aged and you've been running a business for a while, you really need to get under the hood and look. And I'll give you a great example because because we deal with health information, we have to be careful about what we share with other clients. So I'm just going to share about myself. I'm very fit. I ran a half marathon last year with my son. I'm only 180 pounds. I'm 6'3", so I don't have a BMI problem. My dad has had 8 heart attacks, however, and I thought all these years I'm built different. I've lived a different lifestyle. I was thinking, I must have my mom's genes because I don't have a problem. I'm good. Well, guess what? My genetics came back and I've got jalopy genes for cardiovascular. They're not good. And so the combination of the testing, finding out about my deficiency in my immune system for my acid reflux and getting that solved, and now finding out that, no, you do have a very bad profile for cardiovascular health. That doesn't mean I have to accept that. And so that's what we're going to do. Matt and I are going to meet next week probably and go over my genetic report in more detail. And then he's going to direct me on some supplements probably that are targeted in lifestyle change so that those genes never express or turn on. And here's the thing is, I thought I was good and I'm not. And so that complacency could have led to an early death. And secondly, Dr. Matt also told me I can't ever run a half marathon again because of my genetic profile. I could potentially die running because it would cascade inflammation.
Wow.
So just knowing that alone, think about the value of that.
Yeah. Just because you're fit with fitness doesn't mean you're healthy internally. And I think that's the mistake we make, is we can be as fit as we want in fitness, but that doesn't necessarily translate to health. what you're doing is saying, well, let's match your internal health with the external health. And that's really what I see you guys doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, that nailed it.
So let me ask you this. So this is for kind of your business owners, high performers, people who want to really take charge of their health and not settle for, hey, this is my new normal, because everybody says like, hey, wait till you're 40, wait till you're 50, wait till you're 60. And then, so this is really for those people that are saying that, and then, like you said, our body is going to adapt to a new normal, whatever that is. And so that means if it's stress, we're going to adapt to that because our body's resilient, right? But we don't necessarily have to accept that as the new normal. We can actually get better as we age, kind of like red wine, right? So, and that's really what, I hear you guys doing, and you're really doing it with the root cause, in a preventative manner. But, I think if people stopped waiting until something broke, that you could even prevent things a lot quicker too. Give me kind of your last thing you want to add into this. If an entrepreneur's listening to this, Steve, we'll start with you. Just give us like the 30-second to a minute thing of why they would come in or why they would need to come in.
You're already successful, and you've probably got kids and maybe even grandkids. And why gamble? Know the truth, make an investment for a year, reset the rest of your life, and then you just stack the deck in your favor in terms of being able to live longer and live healthier. The odds are with you if you make that investment. And so you can have a greater legacy in building your business as well as the time with your grandkids.
I love it. Matthew.
I don't know. I look at it. I'm just trying to think of like an analogy or something. I like what you said about the vehicle and that. It's like individuals, take care of their cars. A lot of people will take them in for maintenance, get oil changes, and do a lot of stuff proactively so the car doesn't break down at 100,000 miles or 150, et cetera. And unfortunately, we don't approach healthcare like that. So, what we're doing is, we are, providing the oil changes. We are doing advanced diagnostics like they do when they look at your cars through the computer systems and such. So we're staying on par and ahead of course, and looking at things that, give us a lot of tools to keep your machine running, at an optimal level for a long time.
Awesome. Well, hey, I love what you guys are doing, not only for business owners, but just the mission you guys have in general is just making people better, and really, helping people optimize their life, their health, and their lifestyle. And so just want to thank you guys for being on here. If you guys are listening to this also, these guys are convincing me that I'm going to be going through this. So I'm going to actually do this in the next 30 days and start going through it. And so you guys, if you're listening to this, this is an opportunity for you. If you're, in that stressed out kind of burnout state as a business owner, or maybe you don't even know you're in that state and you're just like, man, maybe I need to get, tested and see where I'm at. Just look these guys up, Steve Adams, Tiger Performance Institute and Tiger Performance Medical. And, if you guys are listening to this, I'll also provide in the show notes a link to their site so you guys can get into see them and get you guys taken care of. All right, guys. Well, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate you having us on.
All right, guys. Well, have a great day. All right.
You too. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
The purpose of this show is to guide you to realign with habits that get you to live the life you've always dreamed of. This is the Habit-Based Lifestyle Podcast with Jesse